Hey guys, so today I'm just going to be showing you the capabilities of 3ds Max, specifically in conjunction with third-party plugins, specifically 30 Greeble. Greebling is pretty much a really useful tool in creating really hyperdense cities, just really quick iterations of cities based on a polysurface grid. But I want to show you different capabilities of 3ds Max where its intended use for cities. I want to show you the versatility of it by manipulating it in different ways. We're creating texture or creating hyperdense cities, but in a really interesting way. So I guess I'll start by showing you. Oh, I guess I'll also explain that. But to download Greeble, you just go to the Mr. Clanky website, which is in the description box. Yeah. So after downloading Greeble, it should pop up within the modifier list, and you install it through the customize and configure system path. So I guess we'll start by creating a plane, which will be defining our city, and then segmenting that by, let's say, 25 by 30. We want to create a bit of indifference, so we'll go 35 instead. Cool. So let's go to our top view, go to default shading, and turn down shade surfaces. So what we want to do is we want to convert this into a editable poly. Sweet. Now we can start selecting edge poly surfaces where, let's say, we do it on a grid basis. It's quite interesting. This, that, get rid of this. Big strip. And then what we want to do now is we want to let's get back into our perspective view and let's select a couple more. Let's so now let's select our poly surfaces. We select a couple of poly surfaces. That should do. Put a road through here. Cool, that should do. What we can do now is if we go to our perspective view, we can Greeble this planar surface. So if we go down to modifiers and we go down to Greeble, and there you go. We have a really quick iteration of a cityscape, where Greeble is really interesting, where it can set a minimum height as well as a maximum height. The most useful thing about Greeble is its variation in these aspects, where, like a city, it's not static or whatever. It's quite undulating within its heights. So therefore, Greeble allows this possibility as well as enabling the user to adjust the tapering, as well as the widgets. The widgets is really interesting as it kind of gives it that city vibe, which are these little things up top, which can be controlled through these icons. We can adjust the sizes as well, depending. But that's pretty much the fundamentals of Greebling. The way we can spice this up is if we, let's say, create a cylinder. So create a cylinder. We go downwards. And we want to subdivide this surface to create an even more interesting grid-like structure. So it's not, everything's not so rectilinear. What we can do is, So what we might actually do is we might copy this. Actually, yeah. So yeah, exactly. So what we can do now is we use editable poly, and what we can do is select this poly surface, which is the top, and we want to subdivide this surface. By subdividing the surface, pretty much triangulates the poly surface, which would create a bit more of an interesting pattern. We can control this, the size specifically, let's say we want 15 size. Maybe it's too small. Let's say 20. 20 is not too bad. Let's go back into our top view and then deselect some of the deselect some of these. What's going on here? So what we want to do is we want to edit that poly after the subdivision. Got to remember that. So select all of these. We want to deselect some of these guys, specifically the ones around our hypercity. Let's say we want a couple of roads here. It's looking pretty cool. Maybe edge. So as you can see, these are the locations of the strip of the new city. Let's keep this road access the same. What we can do now is we can build this city up. Actually, let's include that. Include this little area. What's really interesting is we can keep going back and forth between the editable poly and the greebling, taking away surfaces and putting more surfaces in, depending if we don't like it or not. We agree with that, and as you can see, it's a bit more of a triangulated, more chaotic kind of hyper dense environment. So what we do is we can push that up. It's cool. So what we've done is we've quickly created this hyperdense city that's entangling even more hyperdense city. The capabilities of creating dense cities like this is up to the beholder of the user, where the tapering or even the extrusion of the Greeble doesn't have to be so boring and rectilinear. What I like to do sometimes to create a more futuristic, I edit these poly and then I bevel. With bevel, you can extrude the surface and you can inset. So what we really want to do from this is create kind of like a landing for these monolithic buildings. I also like to create a second level of the bevel and then create a more external. So it's more monolithic at the bottom of the thing, trying to escape that ground level of the city. And then greebling this and setting the minimum heights. Let's make this really monolithic above. And there you go. And it kind of creates a really interesting cityscape at the ground floor level. What I also would probably do to create a more futuristic kind of environment is I would probably taper these objects, these towers actually. So taper, kind of taper them in. These sides are looking pretty bare, especially for a hyper dense environment. So I'm thinking maybe if we just turn this this object off, so we can, yep, sweet. So what we want to do now is we want to go into our right view, front or right, doesn't matter. and we want to further edit the poly. So then we want to select the surfaces, select these surfaces. So all we have selected are the sides. We don't want to affect any of the top or bottom. And what we want to do is we want to greeble these as well. So greeble. Like I said before, the greebling capabilities don't stop at just that initial phase of creating that hypercity. We can push the limits of Greeble to create even more interesting objects. Just like by simply greebling the sides of the buildings, kind of create these really interesting and weird shapes and sizes, where the widgets become these really post-apocalyptic kind of window-like situation, and kind of almost starts looking like something out of Blade Runner. Let's taper this so you can see start getting these little tapers on the sides and increase that out. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that kind of perspective. So get out of that, and you take the edge surface faces off. You kind of get like this really apocalyptic cityscape. So as you can see, if we turn back on our scene, you can start to create really fast iterations of a really interesting city, where the capabilities of Greeble just doesn't stop at just creating hyperdense cities, but we can also begin to create textures and even roads and such. So let's start by creating, I guess, a plane, and that can be our brick. Put that as red. And let's create, I don't know, let's say wood texture. Let's create that's brown. So these are my two planar surfaces that I'll start greebling. For the wood surface texture, we want to subdivide that surface, and because wood is more long than it is wide, let's just say we want the lengths to be, length segments, we want 10. Oh, actually, we want 5. Edit. Okay, we want 5. Maybe we want 15. Maybe, yeah, 15. That looks alright. That looks like wooden slats. Maybe I'll bump that up to like 7. Yeah, I'll get like 5. Okay, cool. With this, with bricks pavement, I guess we'll just length segment a little bit longer. So let's go 40. Oopsies. Let's go 30. 30. Cool. So what we want to do now is if we just rotate this object, oops, we want to just rotate this object, place it into a 90 degrees. Yeah, 90. Okay. Go W. And then this is our wall to our back corner. So we want to start greebling, making sure that the object is at, whenever we greeble, it's important to also note that it protrudes on the normal of the surface. So to do this, to turn it around, we just turn this around 180 degrees. Cool. So as you can see, the timber slats are starting to formulate already. What we want to do is we want to deselect the widgets and we want to decrease the maximum heights to kind of create a bit more homogeneous material without it being too randomized. We can decrease the minimum. Cool. Kind of wood-like texture. Maybe we want to increase this a little bit more. Really rusty kind of wood-like material, and greebling the bricks. Same kind of process where we want to take off the widgets and we want to kind of pair the minimum and maximum height a little bit more, but also having that kind of tile-like surface protrude up, which is particularly interesting when we start adding light into the mixture, something like that. And if we go high quality, if we go something with daylight, we can start having that really nice texture just based off a simple greeble. Cool. So I guess that's the end of this tutorial. I just really want to reiterate the flexibility and power of these third-party plugins, where the limitations do not just stop at their initial requirements, such as Greeble. It's able to be used through different platforms of capabilities. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching.